Velkomin kæri gestir, það ánægilegt að koma hér saman í dag á fyrsta Fulbright-fórum vetrarins og það sem við höfum heyra frá bandarískum Fulbright-fræðimanni sem hefur dvalið hér í Reykjavík síðustu mánuði. Viðburðurinn fer fram á ensku og ég ætla núna að skipta yfir. So dear guests, I welcome you all to this first Fulbright Forum of this academic year. Let me note that we're also live on Zoom for those who cannot be here in person, and we are recording. We'll be taking questions after the presentation. So if you want to ask a question virtually, you can log on to the Zoom link as questions will be taken there. And for those who are here in person, we will have refreshments at the end of the presentation. I can't believe that we're already here. It seems like Nicole, who we're going to hear from today, just arrived. It's too soon to be getting ready to say goodbye. But that's the reality. So before her stay comes to an end, we want to hear about her experiences in Iceland over the past 2 months. So Nicole has spent the fall semester at the University of Iceland as a Fulbright-Ministry for Foreign Affairs Arctic Scholar. This grant is set up to advance Iceland as a hub for Arctic scholarship. And we're really interested to have scholars from different disciplines doing different things. Nicole is a lawyer, and her project is in the field of public health, focusing on the crisis in substance use and related issues with a high north perspective. She's visiting us from Maine, where she's affiliated with the Office of Behavioral Health, hosted, as I said, by the University of Iceland. But I'm pretty sure she's been making connections in a lot of different places. So, and I know she's also given a couple of fascinating talks as well. So we'll just hear from her. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Before I start anything about me, I would like to say thank you to everyone here. Obviously to Fulbright, to my sponsor Helgi, who has been amazing, and to everyone else who is associated with Fulbright here. My only wish in leaving is that I'd had more time to spend with you, because I find all of your projects fascinating, but the nature of it is we had to all focus on our own. So please know I support all of you. So to start, this is the very first picture that I took when I got to my apartment in Iceland. I like taking photographs. I don't show as a professional, but it's one of my hobbies. And I thought it was beautiful. It was in the morning, and it's an apropos place to start. Many of you have seen this basic slide, which is the main slide for my project. Over on this side, I described the pillar in the main program for prevention. And then on the other side, I have the Icelandic prevention model, and the icons up top. These are a few of the organizations and entities that I worked with when I ran the grant for the state of Maine. It was a Department of Justice grant. It is not funded anymore, as many grants aren't. And then these are just some of the groups that I've been able to connect with here, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So I thought it would be good to show you, and of course Helgi's seen this, Fulbright's seen this, but these are the questions that I started with. And in an effort to make it easier to understand, instead of just writing out more text, I used icons to illustrate the organizations that were instrumental in answering each of these questions, or at least helping me to gain information in each of these questions. And one thing I want to note about Iceland, because they have such an excellent group of people in networking, and everyone comes together to deal with a problem, you will see that this is not put up here just to say, well, everybody's involved. Everybody really is involved. So I like that visual. So we were told we had to put some pictures up. This was my very first meeting with Helgi at the university, And just to note, I did meet Helgi in person last year. So this has been an ongoing relationship that we've had over email. And then I went, the very first week I was here, before things really got rolling, I went to see the Northern Lights because I think it's just something you should do. Anything in nature astounds me at the beauty. I don't really feel man can make anything more beautiful than this. So my first, that was a here. Yeah, I'm gonna take that as a here. So this was my very first meeting. It's not the way that I expected it to go. I took the very first meeting that I could, that someone had time. It ended up being with the police department, who is, as you saw from the icons, involved in the whole prevention of substance use among youth. Martha was amazing. This is one of Helgi's former students and one of his connections that he suggested. She was incredible. Took a couple of tries to get it going in terms of she's extremely busy. So I was amazed at what I learned from her about the substance use issue here. It is very clear that everyone who works in this issue understands it and understands beyond their own discipline, which I think is critical. So the crux of the issue is that in the 90s, teen drinking was out of control. I think we all would agree. We certainly don't want 42% of 10th graders saying they've been drunk in the last 30 days. That's not where we want to go as a society for the health of our children. So there was an effort to remedy that, and it was surrounding parents and encouraging them to become more aware of what was going on, because of course the family is primary. I know my family was primary and things like that, and that's a lovely thing that we share across cultures, that the family has a lot of importance. So there's a group called Together. Now this was a group that wasn't on my radar in terms of being able to have access to them, but it turns out it's a collective. So it's everyone working truly together and pulling in the same direction. What I like about Saman, and I could do an entire lecture on this and probably a multi-day seminar, is that instead of focusing on a negative viewpoint in terms of, I'm thinking of don't do drugs, which, I grew up during DARE. So DARE, drug abuse resistance education, just say no. Iceland took a very positive approach. They're definitely saying, just say no, we don't want you to be doing drugs, but there are these protective factors that are described. Knowing friends and parents, participating in sports and leisures, being together. So things that kids can grab onto as opposed to simply falling in, maybe being depressed. Mental health is a big part of this, as you'll see. The messaging in Iceland is excellent. Now, part of this does relate to the size of the country. So part of it is because of population, but I don't believe that that's something that I don't believe that that's a barrier in Maine. I think we just need to maybe break it up into counties, for instance. We have 16 counties, okay? So the translation here, togetherness is the best summer gift, meaning, spend time with your family. Parents and children rejoice together on June 17. So when school's done, we're all having fun. Let's not allow unsupervised gatherings. Also, I think Iceland has done an excellent job in recognizing that any weak link in this chain that they have created it's a chance for children and youth to be exposed to things that perhaps might lead them down the wrong path. So one person has a place where they allow children to party or kids to party unsupervised. This is an issue. It's not about telling parents how to parent. It's just saying, be aware of this. Be aware of this. So the culture, in my opinion, the prevention mindset is woven throughout the culture to help support youth. And part of this is seen through Culture Night, which I was lucky to be here for the celebration. And we'll get to that in a minute. But there's even a project that deals directly with that. Because there was an event last year, a very horrible event, where a young girl was murdered, lost her life. So I think that this is something that makes sense. This is also something that makes sense. A prevention day could absolutely be implemented in Maine. That's something we could do, even as a state, not just from county to county or school district to school district. So this is just an interesting, it's one of my prized possessions now. This is a magnet that Icelanders with children, I don't know if they send them to people without children, but with children get, so that they put this on their fridge. These are outdoor hours. So it's not called a curfew again, which can have not a pejorative meaning, but a little bit more negative. Outdoor hours. So, you know, if you're 12 years old, do you need to be out at midnight? I know my parents said absolutely not. I mean, I can't even imagine that. So there's a time limit for different age groups. And this is something I take home. I got it from Marta, along with, I want to show all my police swag.
Nice.
Very, very exciting. And now, the culture night. So I wanted to take part of this because one of the most amazing things I think about Icelandic culture is the community. This is just somebody's backyard where the person or people make you waffles, these beautiful waffles. And I couldn't help but support that. I thought it was important to support that. But what a lovely thing. I ended up in someone's backyard for a concert. It was fabulous. This is another thing that is very important to me. I love animals very much. And here I am at the cat cafe harassing all the cats. And this is one of my actual friends because I have a friend here that I had met the first time I came as a tourist. This is Nicole, the Instagram famous cat. Apparently the second most famous cat in Iceland. So, in order to be fair, this is where you will find him if you'd love to see him. He's a beautiful Bengal. Now, he is very independent. Please don't pick him up. But this is my friend Raka. And we went for many coffees over this time that I've been here. And apropos, we ended up the last one at the Grantee.
Yeah.
Great cat. Yeah. So I've been here as a tourist, as I mentioned before, but I wanted to do a little bit more. I'd not been to Black Sand Beach. So I climbed the basalt columns and I did a helicopter tour of the geothermal areas, which was fascinating. Again, I could talk about that for a long time. I met with Doug, yes, Doug, who is a specialist, not here long, but Doug helped me because he had been here in, I think it was earlier in the year. And he knows a lot about the Icelandic school system and the differences between Iceland and Maine. He also is a teacher. My undergrad is in teaching. So I wanted to connect with somebody and Doug was willing to meet and I met with him at the university. It was lovely. So we move on to another contact that I made. And this was again from Helgi. Thank you very much. This was a little bit out of the realm of what I'm looking at in my entire program and project, but at the same time, it's important because it's harm reduction that's being, that takes place in Iceland. There's a harm reduction drug consumption room in Reykjavik. I think it's the only one in Iceland and it's down by the harbor. I got to visit that. So I visited, learned about what they did, and importantly for the topic that I'm particularly interested in, which is keeping kids away from drugs, children aren't allowed in the building. You can't even bring a child near that building, or Child Protection Services would be called. So this is strictly for people of age, majority age, 18. Lots of great information on that. Because I feel it's so important that this be a program that when I leave, everyone feels like they have gotten something from it. This is just a few of the icons of information from pamphlets and journals that I offered the Red Cross. quickly, Tessa's house is a rehab home for women. Specifically for women, treatment center for women in Maine. Wabanaki deals with treatment and harm reduction and any type of practice for indigenous cultures. So it's very culture oriented. And finally, City of Portland, the one harm reduction place that has a needle exchange. So within my experience here, Iceland is more liberal in some ways with the drug consumption room, but less liberal in other ways with marijuana, which I'll get into. So it's been very interesting to learn about that. Another thing that I love about Iceland, also this does take place in the US, in every state, is reusing and recycling, you know, the opposite of conspicuous consumption. I wanted to volunteer at the drug consumption room or to help them somehow. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even be there when anybody came in. I had to be there before hours. So I decided I'd make a contribution to the Red Cross, which money helps support the drug consumption room. Mm-hmm. Another one of my pictures, this was the first substantive snowfall that was, this wasn't the snowstorm, but this was just a beautiful morning. It reminded me of Switzerland. Another really interesting thing, and I encourage you to go if you have a vehicle and you can get here. I did it through a tour. I'd already done the Golden Circle tour, but I had not gone to the tomato farm, and it was lovely. It was really fun. So they have a delicious tomato soup and other things you eat right in the greenhouse. This is one of my pictures that I thought was really lovely with the sunset. I told Helgi last Friday that I was taking the day off, that, you know, this was essentially done, obviously. And I took the day off to do touristy things. This woman's a force of nature, an absolute force of nature. My very first meeting, we met at Bread and Company, and she is the Chief Knowledge Officer for Planet Youth, which is the group that is of great interest to me and the heart of this project, I think. We spent a lot of time together. She was very open, very willing to answer questions. She flies around the world explaining Planet Youth. She had just gotten back from South Africa, Turkey. So this was a huge meeting for me. Marta is amazing. Marta was going to be here today, but she is out of work for a while. So I will tell you, though, our relationship doesn't end here. I'll explain that at the end. Then for the university, Helgi and I had sat together, and I wanted to give a presentation that was interesting for people in the criminal law society. I've never been a criminal law attorney. I write contracts. That's what I did. No one wants to hear about that. I get it. Most people are bored by it. Criminal law is kind of the sexy area of the law. But I wanted to do this because there is a difference between the state of Maine and Iceland here, with Iceland still having marijuana as contraband, as illegal. So this is the presentation that I gave, not only to everyone who showed up both in person and online at the university, but also to 3 organizations that were interested. Planet Youth wanted it, the police, and the Directorate of Health. They have the slides even. So anything that they have for questions, I've encouraged them to talk with me about it, to reach out to me. And I don't have time to go through the entire presentation. That obviously was about 40 minutes in and of itself of substance. But I discussed the timeline of cannabis law in Maine. I show how close the vote was. I mean, this could have gone either way. It didn't matter which way it went. With these numbers, you see that there's a real split in opinion on this. I talked about the annual sales trends. This also ties to the positive part of the marijuana legalization, which is anytime you tax something, you're going to have tax revenue to use for whatever you want to use it for. So I made sure to include the amount of sales tax per each year. Now you had a slow start, as you saw. I explained that. We all know what was going on with COVID, so it was very difficult to have sales and to have brick places to go. It's leveling out now. Our tax on it is going up to 14% from 10%, but this is hardly a huge increase, and I wanted to discuss that part of it because the financial part of it is important too. Washington is the highest tax state at 37%, so we're nowhere near that. Here's the problem that I pointed out. This is the data that I had to work with on the Maine side, and when I say problem, I mean a problem from my own state. When you're working with old data, that's not helpful, and I think Iceland does a very good job through its Planet Youth, at least initially, and continuing on now with the configuration with the university. They have accurate, up-to-date data. And I'm just going to point out one thing here. The reason why I say this is not helpful now is because we've got 101 actively licensed adult use cannabis stores in Maine. Here's the number now that's actual. Far more than double. That's important. Plus, there are 88 medicinal stores. So when you don't have accurate data, you're looking at it and you're making decisions or trying to make policy or legal decisions, you need the right data. Iceland's done a very good job at dealing with their data. Same problem with my slide on young adults using in Maine. Now it's even worse. It goes back to 2021, not 2022. I talked about challenges. Americans will know this. If it's not federally legal, then the banks can't support it. So we have an issue. Great, it's legal in states. You're not going to get any support from the banks to open your own place. We've also had these very odd things come up that even though it took 4 years to implement this, there was a lot of thought that went into this policy, a lot of work. It did not eliminate the illegal use of homes, abandoned homes or purchased rural homes for illegal grow operations. This has caused a problem in our court system with a logjam because it's a Chinese crime ring, specifically a Chinese crime ring. And the problem is because we have such robust defense rights for people who have been accused of something in our country, which I don't think anybody has a problem with that. But the problem is, of course, to find Cantonese speakers has been an issue for them. So we have 16 cases right now. 8 have been charged. It looks like they're going to be kicked to next year in an already stressed court system. So here I am at the start of the Women's Day Off walk on a much lighter note. And here's Belinda, what I was telling you about. I had seen this, and I hope I say it right, Jonsonar or Jonsonar?
Yeah, Jonsonar.
Jonsonar. Jonsonar. Apparently this is a thing the kids, little kids love. What an amazing haunted house.
Where,
Have you ever seen it?
haunted? I haven't, no.
Go.
Jonsonar?
Yes, on Halloween.
Oh, on Halloween.
On Halloween.
Okay.
Oh, I beat all the kids there because I live 2 streets down. I beat all the kids there because I knew it would be popular. It was absolutely stunning. There are far more pictures than that, but that was on my radar the second I got here when I found out about it. I got to the Directorate of Health. This was a little bit more of a convoluted path. I started out with the Ministry of Health, went to the Directorate, ended up with a project manager who couldn't be there, but I had 2 amazing people who offered me presentations. And boy, were they good. And we spent a lot of time. I offered them our information from Maine. I also offered them, because there is a movement to legalize marijuana in Iceland. There are some people who want to do that. That comes up. I offered them the guides that we've created for talking to youth, because still when you're talking about legalizing marijuana, you're not talking about doing it for 10-year-olds. It's for people of age. So I wanted them to have this. Why reinvent the wheel if they can find something that's useful in there? So in talking to kids. This is it's just 4 slides of the presentation they offered me. They offered me another document with a checklist promoting, this is where I said the mental health issue comes in, promoting mental health and well-being among youth, all tied in. right? It's all tied in together. And this is the specific document. I offered them, because one thing that I found that Iceland needs help with, or maybe could bolster, is treatment. I was told that there are a handful of people who have even gone to South Africa for treatment, because there isn't a really solid treatment plan here or program. So we have that in Maine. We do have very good treatment programs for people who have become addicted to substances. Offered them that. We also have one really good area in which we collect data. I was part of this. It was a weekly meeting. We would meet to see how many drug overdoses took place the following week. The numbers aren't finalized until maybe a couple of months after, because they have to be adjusted for suicide or anything that if it's a death that is inconclusive. Okay. I'm not going to expect you to read these, but these are the back and forths, and that's only 4 of them. We've been sharing information left and right. Main delegation for the Arctic Circle conference. Now, I gave my presentation. This was my slide, of course, as everyone remembers. I was shocked to see a booth from Planet Youth at this. It was not there last year. So I immediately made a beeline to talk with the chief analytics and the chairman of the board. This led, if nothing else, and I enjoyed a whole lot of stuff about that summit. This led to a meeting at the headquarters. They invited me to the headquarters, where again, more information. My suitcase was full of stuff. I'm so happy I get rid of the stuff that I brought and I get to buy gifts for my family. Information specific, in this case, to Planet Youth. We do have services for youth who are addicted in Maine. Day 1 is specifically for youth. We even have Bulldog Health Center. This is in central Maine, very close to where I went to high school. This is another high school that has a health reach program for students who are addicted. So this was something they were interested in, not necessarily because it ties in with prevention, but it's that next step. What if somebody does fall through the cracks, right? Which happens. We'd love it to be a zero, absolutely no kids addicted to drugs. That's not going to happen. So you have to have another option. I made it to home and school, which I didn't even know existed. So I took a bus and went to the headquarters there. They support parents, and this is a really interesting concept. We do a little bit of this in Maine, but I don't think as well. Family engagement is under the Department of Education in our state, so that was something that was interesting to them. I gave them all of the contacts that they could need to look this up. We have cyberbullying, because of course, when kids are under stress and their mental health is failing, perhaps I turn to a substance to alleviate that, right? We all fight a battle in life, and kids are no different. This was something, this 764 network is an absolute nightmare, something that I talked about with them. It's, without getting into it too far, it's a group apparently that just enjoys pulling in young people from the internet, getting them to harm themselves, harm their pets, or even commit suicide. And this is done not for money. This is just, they say they just want to destroy civilization. So this is what we're dealing with the internet. This really concerns me, and they're concerned about it. So I sent this article to them because apparently, unbeknownst to me, once I started researching, we are treating them in the US. We're going to call this a terrorist group in some form. I don't know what that will end up being, but we've got to do something about these people, because that obviously can't be allowed. So some more of my pictures that I like to take. This is not photoshopped. This is exactly as I took it from the House of Collections. As a prism exhibit there. And I was in the room and took the picture and just really loved it. Juxtaposing, I spent time in Sud Hall to recover from the snowstorm. Although I love the snowstorm. A lot of people were very upset about it. I love it. I'm from a state that has blizzards. I just thought it was wonderful. Although it was very early. Boy, was that early. We don't usually get that either. So in summing everything up, there were also other meetings. Obviously, meeting with Helgi was critically important to me. Meeting with Doug. I went to webinars, Prevention in Scotland. This took me to Scotland of all places. I never thought that I would be engaged with Scotland in this talk. The Arctic Circle pre-trip delegation meeting was important because they highlighted Fulbright for me. So Fulbright got a plug. And then, of course, I already went over the Planet Youth. New Golden Triangle. This was an amazing webinar about fentanyl in North America and to show you how everything is connected and why the Arctic needs to be concerned. The Golden Triangle is talking about Mexico, America, and Canada and the drug trade that's going on. But the key part of it was the Vancouver ports are being used to export drugs to Australia and New Zealand. So it's almost like there is no barrier anymore. There's almost no silo. These rings know how to utilize legal ports and legal means of transportation in order to get drugs and move them around the entire world. I missed one. Of course, Planet Youth. They had a seminar and I went to that. So to conclude, this is just the beginning. I'm going to continue to share information. I just sent the directorate, I sent her information yesterday on Ukraine's efforts in prevention. Ukraine, of all places, is working still through the war to prevent kids from using drugs because they're having an issue with it, understandably. Continued partnership with all of these wonderful people that I met, and I met them, I think it's important that we met for coffee too, Marta, just for fun, just to talk on a human level. So that was lovely. Specific to Maine's needs, this entire time I've been in contact with the director of all things drug related in Maine. He was appointed by the governor, so I don't have power to influence this. I don't have power to influence the governor, but he does. And he has all of the information from Iceland and everything that I've learned. So I'm going to summarize this for him. And then the most exciting thing that I am absolutely thrilled to announce is there's going to be a collaboration with Planet Youth in front of Maine's top leadership in February at the monthly seminar that this gentleman, Gordon Smith, the director, runs. I would like to take as little time as possible because I'm not the expert, but I will introduce it by way of showing how Planet Youth has been brought in. So maybe 10 or 15 minutes of what I've done, if I can get it down to 10 or 15 minutes. And then Marta will take over. And they will have the chance to hear about Planet Youth from the experts. It's apropos to end. I showed you the morning, the very first picture I took in the morning. This was a sunset over the pond that I just thought was stunning. And I thank you. Back here.
Thank you. It's so fabulous there, and it's so fabulous how passionate you are. It comes through about what you're doing, and that is always so nice and just, yeah, it's so clear. But I want to open up for questions. So I'm going to start. I already have a million, but I'll start if does anybody want to jump in with a question? Or should I then? I mean, so one of the things that we see here in Iceland is, despite all of the wonderful work that is done, that we have a segment of our youth population that is falling between the cracks and is very much at risk and is already, and I mean, I'm no expert, but if you can believe what you read in the news, there are younger and younger kids getting into very, very heavy drugs. I'm sure marijuana is a gateway, but then they're very quickly going into very heavy drugs. Were there discussions about that at all that you took part in what between Iceland and Maine? Are there things that you can be showing each other and learning from each other in that area. I mean, you did talk about it a little bit, but that's what is so scary, I think, for many of us here now, to see that even 12, 13, 14-year-old children are taking extremely dangerous and addictive drugs.
Yeah, and I think that the
Yeah.
import of that, it can't be understated because drugs themselves are being cut with so many things now. So even if you argue, okay, well, cocaine, I'm just snorting cocaine. I know what cocaine does. I know the risks. The problem is from the start of the chain, the supply chain, to the point where the dealer brings it, it's cut with other things. In America, we're seeing horrible things with xylazine, which is called tranq. I mean, people's limbs are rotting off because they think they're injecting fentanyl. They think it's an opioid, and there may be some fentanyl in it, but they're not. So we almost can't have a policy that allows for kids to just try the drugs, because that one try might end their life.
Mhm.
Whereas I think probably back in the 70s, it wasn't so much that way. I think, I was a kid in the 70s, but to me, marijuana was marijuana then. It wasn't the synthetic stuff that we're seeing in our state even. So there was a lot of talk also about a concern of sliding back. And one of the canaries in the coal mine is the use of vaping. This mirrors Maine. Maine has had success in eliminating or reducing, I should say, vaping among high school students. But the sad part is it's been driven down to junior high. So junior high students think it's cool. High school no longer does. So now we've got to go, with younger people, you need to understand, of course, developmental stages in order to do that. That's a little bit different than dealing with high school students. How do we do that? So there were a lot of conversations about that. And I was sad, Helgi had sent me a question that someone had about, if there was an increase in alcohol or other drugs since the legalization of marijuana. And because I don't have that data, I couldn't answer that. That's why it's critical to have that data. So as I'm able to get more information, I am happy to pass that along.
Is that data being collected now?
It is.
Yes.
It's collected, but it's not in a report, so it does no one any good. I know for a fact it's being collected. It's just sometimes the reporting portion of it takes a lot of time, and the policies behind it, you have to be careful. Like I said, with our weekly meetings, we didn't just immediately come out at the end of the month, so say September 30, and say, well, this many people died from an overdose in September, because we know there were adjustments that needed to be made. So you have to be very careful with numbers. They need to mean something. They can't just be thrown about. So we have the numbers. Let's produce something like what Planet Youth does, which is really good reporting on them.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicole, for a fascinating talk, and also your presentations, with these slides, and especially your photos, you put it all together.
Thank you.
And for all the connections that you made,
Yes.
it is really something, and I'm kind of a little bit proud of being more proud.
No, you were a huge part of it. You
So
should be
it's
proud.
very nice to see that you made out of your visit here. There was, you mentioned with your talk at the university, and you were talking about the marijuana legislation there, you also, you mentioned it here, that there's a group in Iceland, that is actually proposing legalization, but, a much bigger question here in Iceland has been the decriminalization legislation,
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and there's some support for that, but not much for legalization of marijuana, but there's a lot of support for decriminalization of the possession of drugs for personal use.
There is in Maine as well. The problem that we've run up against is in developing policy, and I know that Belinda and I had a discussion about this, and she said, well, in Iceland, no, we just implement it and worry about it later. And I said, no, it takes a long time. This would be like 4 years of people talking, but there is a reason why. This is one thing I think that Maine does well. There is a reason why. When you get down to making policy in terms of who should not be prosecuted. So, you know, people say at the drug consumption room. How do you then determine that who should and shouldn't be prosecuted? We certainly don't want to say, well, only the sickest, because then how do you define, for our laws, how do you define the sickest? We don't want to say, well, if you inject 3 times a day, you're really, really sick. 2 times a day is fine. It becomes very difficult. And I say that really without, it's not with judgment, it's not with moral judgment, it's with an understanding of writing a law. 0.08, you know, in Maine is you're driving drunk. It's much high, it's a higher standard, a lower number here. So in Iceland, there can be some things that are more conservative than what we have. Those things have to be considered before you start writing policy. We do have the same concept, though. There is a group that supports the decriminalization for possession, not obviously for trafficking, you know, like what I talked about, for personal possession. So then another issue that would come in that needs to be considered is, okay, well, how much fentanyl is used only for personal possession? That has to be defined, because if you want to have a trafficking, anything above that, then you've got to have a definition. So there's a lot of work that goes into that.
That's a technical application of it. It has been
Yes.
problematic here in Iceland. So people are trying to sort it out.
Yes.
That was another dimension to it this talk at the University of Iceland. That is, and to some degree it surprised me. I had read about it a little bit, but you have legalized marijuana in a number of states in the US.
40.
40. Oh my God, so that's a lot more.
In one form or another.
Even in Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My state. Okay, but what was interesting in your talk was that there still is a dual market here. There's
Yes,
a legal market.
yes,
Still, there's an illegal market.
absolutely.
And there was this one former member of parliament who has actually proposed, decriminalization of the Icelandic parliament. And she contacted me concerning that issue. She asked me, to ask you if because that you are selling marijuana legally in certain parts of the state, but then there are other large parts of the state that do not sell it. And she talked about more in the rural parts of Maine, that you don't have any marijuana as a legal aspect, and that's where the illegal market steps in.
Illegal can kind of step in, right, if there isn't, one of the slides that I'd shown
So now I'm asking you this question.
Yeah, it's very much Maine and Iceland. Demographically, if you look at where people live, we have a very concentrated population, much like Iceland. Rural, okay, there's this machine in the central part of the state, specifically Cumberland County, where there are the most people. But once you get in the rural areas, it's a lot more difficult to open a business. I don't care what it is. I mean, a grocery store, it doesn't have to be marijuana. It's you've got a lot more poverty. You've got a lot more unemployment. You actually have a lot more issues with drugs and alcohol. So they're taking advantage of those areas to distribute their drugs, and they're also shipping them out of state to out of state markets. We don't know where all of them are going. We don't know.
Isn't it also, you're getting past the tax, right? So you can.
Oh, yes, of course.
And
Of course.
you can cut it with things because nobody's monitoring, so.
It's not true marijuana sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're spraying synthetic, and this is the thing that's the health issue and the real concern. You're not getting a marijuana plant, or maybe you're getting 50% of it marijuana. The rest of it is some analog that's been created and sprayed onto the plant, and you think you're smoking marijuana, and you're not. You're not, and who knows what that's doing to you. So it's a health issue as well. We're concerned about that because even for adults, we don't want adults having more health issues because they don't know what it is. I believe that we don't have a great FDA. I'm certainly not standing up for the FDA, but if there's no regulation at all, you can imagine what people will put in it. Bad actors will take advantage of that. Not everybody, but enough bad actors that you can have some damage done to your society.
Well, guys, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up before we end, Nicole.
I could talk for so long.
But we can continue. We can continue chatting informally afterwards, but I think we're going to have to give like a formal end to the presentation. I want to thank our audience, both in person and virtual. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And these presentations always make me so thankful for the Fulbright program, which allows us to foster collaboration between, the US and Iceland in this way. And I think what you've been doing is showing, all of the connections that you've made, all of the work that's going to go forward from this, and possibly even a collaboration between Planet Youth and the state of Maine, possibly. It's just amazing. You're going to be joining, of course, a very special group, the Fulbright Iceland Alumni Group. And so you're not going to be rid of us just because you're in Iceland. We're going to be connected for years and decades to come. I hope at least that we have built a lasting bond and that we're going to be seeing you here and we're going to be hearing more about all of the great things that come out of this later on, right? And I also wanted to, and I did also want to mention that we have 2 more Fulbright forums coming up. One next week and then one in December. And so stay tuned to our social media for that. And I also wanted to say to Nicole, just thank you so much. You have done a fabulous job. You have done Fulbright Iceland proud. We have for you a little parting gift. And a Fulbright Iceland pin.
Thank you.
And a little certificate for completing successfully your Fulbright in Iceland. So once again, thank you to everybody.
Yes.
We'll have refreshments out front, and goodbye to those who were with us virtually.